All right, hey, I'm really excited about being here. I became thoroughly less excited when I heard you get to grade me on my performance. So be kind. All right, what I'd like to do is talk to you though about Boeing, but specifically about Boeing here in the St. Louis region and in the Missouri and frankly Illinois bi-state region. I'm from this region. I was born here in the St. Louis area. I've been fortunate enough with Boeing to move around a lot, but I always get to come back to St. Louis, and I really do think this is a great place to live, and it's certainly a great place for our business. So let's get into some of the things that what Boeing does and what we represent. So Boeing is a company, the world's largest aerospace provider globally. Big company. We're actually going to celebrate our 100-year anniversary next year in 2016. We know Boeing, though, by other names, possibly here in the St. Louis region, because Boeing is actually made up of 5 great icons in the aerospace industry. And the one that started here in St. Louis 75 years ago, almost 76 years ago now, was McDonnell Aircraft Company. And I'll talk more about that. So a great history of aerospace with a lot of companies, great history here in the St. Louis region. Now, Boeing itself is made up of really 2 big divisions. We have a commercial division that builds commercial airliners that we probably all get to ride on. And we have a defense division. At the time we actually merged together, that separation or that balance was about a 50-50 business balance. That was considered to be pretty good ideal. Well, it's grown to be a 2/3, 1/3 balance between commercial business and our defense business. And it's not because the defense business has shrunk. This is just how much the commercial business is growing. And even though what we do primarily here in St. Louis is defense-based, I'll tell you why the commercial business is so good for us. But by the way, that growth is going to continue. So if there's anybody out there who wants to start their own aerospace company, now would be a good time. I warn you though, it takes a little bit of capital. So here in St. Louis, here in the Missouri region, we have not just a large presence of Boeing. We have the headquarters for our defense and space and security business. The headquarters. That was not a given. That was a thoughtful decision made by the corporation on what makes sense for Boeing. And I was thrilled that they actually made the decision after the merger to not just keep workers work here, but to actually headquarter it here. And what does that mean for us? Well, I'll get into that a little bit as we go along. But there's 5 basic divisions, but there's really 3 that comprise the bulk of what we do here in the defense, space, and security business. The first is Boeing military aircraft, and we're the world's largest supplier of Boeing military aircraft. The second is network space and space and security business. We're the world's largest supplier of satellites, and we're NASA's largest contractor. That sounds pretty good. And then global services and support, and that's our fastest growing business division, providing support for military customers here in the United States and our allies around the world. So pretty awesome stuff. All right, so our current state here in Missouri, we are the 4th largest employer in Missouri. Somebody just said we're the 5th. I'm not sure which we are now. Now I'm all confused. My chart says 4, I heard 5. What I do know is we are a large employer, and it's nice to have healthy competition within the state by any company that's employing people. Now, I'm not trying to impress you with the size of Boeing. It sounds like I am. We're just proud of what we do. What we do requires us to be a large corporation, but actually us as a large corporation, we're very pro small business as well, because what we do creates a lot of work for businesses around the region. So we employ right now 15,000 people here in the St. Louis region. We have 5 labor unions that represent us. We have almost 25,000 retirees in the St. Louis and bi-state region. Now the supply base I talked about, 612 suppliers in Missouri, with getting close to $1 billion of revenue annually that goes out to that supply base. And most of those medium to small companies themselves. Nothing says that we love where we are and love the region more than the investment in the region, right? So this chart here is a laundry list of things that we've done to our infrastructure and facilities here in the St. Louis region since 2000. And you can see we've invested over $785 million in our infrastructure here in the region. It's pretty obvious that we wouldn't do that if we weren't here to stay. More importantly, it's very obvious that we wouldn't do that if we didn't have the support of Missouri. Thank you very much for all of that, and the support of the community. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how that gets reciprocated, certainly as well. Two of the items that I'll point out there that we've done recently is we have a new flight operations center up up at Lambert Field that we've been operating out of for the last few years. State-of-the-art facility. So anybody that flies in and out of St. Louis probably knows that there's a large set of buildings that is now vacated. That was the old Curtiss Wright, then McDonnell Aircraft plant. And we moved across a little catty corner to that on the airport into that new flight operations center with a lot of other new buildings. And now we're building a brand new facility, a composites fabrication center, over 367,000 square foot building expansion. And that is going to be we're doing it out of need, which is good. We're doing it because we are supporting some commercial business, and I'll describe what that is here in a second. This chart, somebody has always warned me to stop talking on this chart at some point, because this is what we do. These are the products that we make and build and design and provide to our customers. This is why, personally, myself and I think all 15,000 people that we've got working at Boeing do what we do, because we get to work on really cool things. We get to work for very inspiring customers. I mean, the video you saw was one of our employees, Scott Radke, who he's passionate about what he does, and that's how we create good value for the investment that our customers are providing us. So a lot of different products. I'm fortunate enough to be the program manager for the F-15, but the F-18 Navy fighter that's shown on there, and the Growler that you saw in the video, those three aircraft comprise the bulk of what you will see flying overhead, from out of our plant. So if you ever want an air show, just go up to Lambert on a daily basis and you get to see one. But a lot of other things, a lot of weapons. We also have quite a large plant over in St. Charles building advanced weaponry for our military. And what does our military do that's so inspiring? Well, they keep the peace, they keep global stability, and they keep our way of life safe and free. All right, so we do primarily defense work here in St. Louis. This is where our headquarters are. That's what we do. That's what we do really well. By doing that so well, by having a large presence here, it also pulls in additional work from outside outside of what we normally would do in the defense work. And this is a great example of that. The 777X is a next generation aircraft. It's a derivative of a 777 aircraft that I would assume many of you have flown on. You wouldn't even know it, because if you're like me, you get on a jet and you look at the seats. That next generation aircraft, though, it's a big deal to Boeing. It's a big deal to our airline customers, and now it's a big deal to St. Louis, because the work that we are moving to the St. Louis region, just off of that alone, is what's prompted us to build that new 367,000 square foot facility. It's to actually go out and purchase 6 what's known as large autoclaves and have a world-class composites fabrication center right here in St. Louis. That will be a significant core capability for our Boeing Corporation for decades. Very excited about that. So building aircraft is what people know that we do most. I always say, though, we don't build aircraft if we don't design them, and that's the balance of our business. We have to have the front-end design work, we have to have the build work, and then it's a nice iterative process. So I'm going to get a little bit very quickly walk through some of the build aspects of our business. So building aircraft, if you ever get an opportunity to go up and take a tour of the facility line, and you walk through and you compare and contrast it to an automobile manufacturing plant, you realize a couple things. One is we don't build nearly as many aircraft per day as automobile manufacturing plants. But secondly, it seems like there's a lot more procedures that are going on per aircraft, and there's millions and millions of things that have to go into these aircraft. So trying to automate that is not nearly as easy as trying to automate the build of something simpler, that you're going to manufacture. So I'm going to go through a few of these and talk about what we do. So in the additive manufacturing is just a really nice term for something you might have heard of called 3D printing. And 3D printing gets talked about a lot as a wave of the future, and it's incredible what we can do with that. That picture down there in the lower left is a part that actually goes on a satellite, and it was made by actually a printing process. It's a metallic part that's used for that. This application is best used for low-rate production, which is what satellites certainly are, right? And for prototyping. And that's a wave of the future for us, is more prototyping. We're trying to get out of having to build hundreds, if not thousands, of very similar aircraft and get into building hundreds, if not thousands, of aircraft, but they can be much more different, which requires techniques like this. Robotics and automation. So, as I mentioned, the work on a jet on an aircraft jet is very complex, and and everything tends to be very different. It does not lend itself well to automation. So we are seemingly less automated than an automobile manufacturing plant because it's more difficult. But when you get up and you really see what's going on, it's just because it takes another level of complexity on automation and robotics, and we've invested quite a bit in that for our plants up here in this region, and of course in our other manufacturing sites as well. Network-enabled manufacturing. So this is we have a large, diverse footprint and population of people working on the aircraft with tooling and parts. Being able to know where all those parts are, so that not by somebody taking an inventory, but by the parts themselves telling you where they are. Knowing which tools, where they are, whether they're in calibration, and whether they're faulty is important. And having a direct tie between the production operations and the engineering support and the quality team is very huge. So we've made a lot of strides in enhancing and improving this that continue to prove very beneficial. And then wearable technology. What we found is we were able to move into the virtual world pretty nicely with tablets, but then we found that tablets don't lend themselves well to a lot of the workspaces that we have. So using things like visors and wrist-held devices is huge, but it's not as simple as going to a store and buying those. It's a lot of developed technology, which leads me to the virtual augmented reality world, where we don't just have work instructions now that people can see through visors, but we actually have mock-up work. We have workers that can get to the aircraft and they can see what is supposed to be there before it's there and practice putting it on. It's good for training. It's good to make sure things fit. It's good for a lot of different reasons. It's good also just for customer engagement so that they can see what we're looking at for the future. Now let's get moving off of manufacturing, more to Boeing here in the St. Louis region. Community involvement is really key to mine, to the companies, and to our team's hearts. There is rarely a week that goes by where we don't have some big community engagement activity, which requires where we ask for volunteers, and we get a host of volunteers to do things. You see some photographs there of some of our people who are volunteering time. Just to give you a few statistics, last year alone, we had over 7,000 people that we assisted with charitable grants, over almost 1,500 teachers. We contributed $17.5 million in grants and contributions and things. Over 1,200 computers. But one of the key things that is, I think, what I would consider to be priceless is the actual volunteer time by our employees. And we had over 6,000 hours that we clocked, and I guarantee it's probably more than triple that with unclocked, of our people actually going out and cleaning up riverbanks and helping with food banks and definitely advancing science, technology, engineering, and math in the schools, of which you see some nice photos of that going on at work. So a lot of great stuff with community involvement that is not at all a chore or a sacrifice. It invigorates all of us who live here in the region. For our employees, we do a lot for our employees, which of course is good for the entire region as well, because first off, we have a nice payroll. That payroll is just indicative of the number of employees we have and the quality of work that they do. So $1.9 billion payroll annually here at this site. Most of our workforce is college educated. 72% have bachelor's degrees, and almost half have even graduate level degrees. It's amazing to me over the 30 years that I've been with the company is how that has even changed even on the shop floor with people who have now degrees. We have a great learning together program, which means tuition paid, night classes or weekend classes for many of our employees. Over $9.6 million in tuition paid in that employee for 1,770 of our employees. And then something that we started up a few years ago that I'm really excited about. We partnered with the St. Louis Community College to help train people so that they could then be hired by Boeing to immediately work within our production operations, which of course then gives them a foot in the door to advanced careers. And I'd like to show you maybe a little video on this at this point.
On the Florissant campus of St. Louis Community College, assembly mechanics of the future hone their craft. The noises of riveters and drills fills the classroom workshops for Boeing's free pre-employment training course.
They go through a 5-week training program where they really learn the Boeing way of assembling, being an assembly mechanic, riveting, fastening, sealing. They learn the techniques and the quality that Boeing needs and Boeing wants.
So right now I'm expanding the holes.
One current student, Austin Ellen, is taking the pre-employment course in the hopes of fulfilling a long-time career goal for himself.
Growing up, I always kind of wanted to work for Boeing, work with them, and I'm actually studying mechanical engineering.
Every step of the course Austin completes puts him one step closer to a potential career at the Boeing company.
If they apply themselves to the program, they study, they come in every day and do a good job and pass the program, that they have a great opportunity to start with Boeing. We've hired 87% of the candidates, about 212 students over the last 4 years.
With 2 years of mechanical engineering under his belt, Aaron Foster moved to St. Louis from Kansas to capitalize on this opportunity to start a career at Boeing. Foster likes his chances thanks to the quality of training the pre-employment course provides.
I like the fact that this is as real as it gets. It's the perfect training to get hired on.
An 8x8 sample piece of sheet metal today could be a part for a fighter jet tomorrow, which is exactly the path that Boeing assembly mechanic Miso Oreskinen took 5 years ago when he enrolled in the pre-employment course.
I'm actually working that sheet metal job now, and it's helped me, I learned almost everything what you need to start the job in Boeing.
The pre-employment program graduate list has also turned out department managers and beyond at the Boeing company.
I would say if you're wanting to get into another industry or the aviation and you're mechanically inclined and you want to learn something new, then why would you not take this opportunity to take the class, come to Boeing, learn more, and then I guess the cliche, the sky's the limit.
And that's what current students Austin and Aaron are drilling toward.
It'd be a dream come true, really.
It's definitely a company that I want to work for.
Thanks. So that video encompasses a lot of what I just mentioned in terms of what I consider to be the reason why we like working here so much in this region. We have a great partnership with the community college. This is just one example of those, but it's a great example. The St. Louis Community College and Boeing work together to create this opportunity that helps the community college, helps Boeing, and helps those people that you saw in that video. I actually am quite thrilled to watch that video, to see some of the people that I see on a daily basis, and to know that they've actually got ambitions that are even beyond what they're currently getting a foot in the door to do, and that's where the Learning Together program will help them as well. So great partnership. That's key to our business success. I think it certainly is something that the St. Louis region counts on from a company like Boeing, and it's something that keeps Boeing certainly in the area as well. So, leading me to working with Missouri. This picture here is a great illustration of that partnership. There's a photograph down there at the bottom of the groundbreaking for that new facility that I just mentioned that we're building up near the airport, 367,000 square foot building. It's going to be the largest composite manufacturing center for the Boeing company. Therefore, it's going to be one of our centers of excellence. It is going to house 6 new autoclaves to build very large composite parts that we could never build before. It's going to be transforming to Boeing and certainly to our footprint here. And it is definitely an example of how Boeing operates. Even though I started the discussion off with the balance between commercial and defense, our thrust ever since the merger has been how do we try to blend those together. We call that the one Boeing. You see that on the chart with in quotes. That one Boeing approach is key. Not as, and it doesn't just happen because we just say, well, it'll happen. It happens because we demonstrate a capability and an expertise and an economic advantage of doing things here, and that pulled that work into our facility here. It pulled the expansion of our footprint here, which of course will just fuel more potential work coming here, which will fuel even more supplier-based work here in the region as well. So great example of what I like to see. So in summary, what do we do at Boeing? What do we do here with Missouri? So we, as a company, we're focused on customers. Hopefully every company is, right? But we are definitely focused on customers at this point in time where there is a downturn in the defense industry, and we're able to keep our business actually growing by repositioning ourselves more for the future. We're building F-18s and F-15s. Currently, we expect to build them for many years to come. But what are we doing for the future? And there's quite a bit there that's coming out of our business site. And it won't all be building jet fighters. It won't be just even building parts for commercial aircraft. There's a host of new activities that we're working that recognize that there's a build, quite a bit of a build, not all of it even hardware related out there in the future. It is definitely it's a dynamic environment for us because I'm not sure the pace of technology has changed more or the world politics has changed as much as it has in a long time as it is now. That is definitely driving a lot of our thought process of what do we need to do. So when we make investments like that in Composites Manufacturing Center, or even the investment in the site that we have in general and staying here, it's not an easy decision. And when those decisions are made, you can be assured there was a lot of discussion, and it's a score for the Missouri and the region here every time we score one of those. Investment in people, though, is always key. 15,000 people that work with Boeing now, many more that really we consider our teammates that are working for companies that are supporting our businesses, whether it's in direct support of those products or supporting our infrastructure. That is key. So, in summary, I'll tell you, being born here in St. Louis, being fortunate enough with the company to be able to live here currently and to keep being able to come back here. I'm looking forward to being one of those eventually, not anytime soon, retirees here in the region as well. I think we've got a definite model for how well to work with the state of Missouri in the region and for long-term growth in business. So thank you for your time. Appreciate the interest.